if complacency and inaction settle in following last week's UN General Assembly meetings?
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. In fact, I think that the biggest concern is escalation. We've seen it, in other cases. We saw it this morning, the possibility of the Venezuelan situation blowing up in a chaotic way. And that's why international intervention of different kinds, we're talking of not military intervention, but intervention that would be constructive in solving or addressing at least some of the agenda issues there, is so pressing. What we're seeing is a combination of humanitarian and political and security crisis overlapping one with the other. And in fact, it's very difficult to disengage one area from another, but undoubtedly the humanitarian crisis is what keeps us more concerned, particularly because of the large amount of Venezuelans that have left the country. Costa Rica itself has received its quota of immigrants. It's not as large as Colombia's or Ecuador's or Peru's, but still we can fathom, the human costs of this of the actions of this horrible regime that has pushed the people out. Again, I think that escalation would be the biggest threat, and it's not far away. We should move urgently, and not, as you say, we should not release our attention on the Venezuelan case, which is something we could very easily do.
Yeah, and Ambassador De Vink, in terms of area, Venezuela is the largest neighbor of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, with Aruba and Curacao. We'll hear more on Aruba, just off the Venezuelan coast. My question to you is, following this broad support, as President Solis mentions, the importance of not letting complacency settle in and what could be the implications of that for the region, but following the broad support the interim government received last week in New York, what steps would the Kingdom of the Netherlands like the international community to take in an optimal scenario to really help to prevent some of these increasing effects that you're seeing on the kingdom?
No, thanks very much, Jason, and thanks for this opportunity. Thanks also to Foreign Policy and the FIU and the Atlantic Council for doing what you did this morning. That was I think a great success. On your question, I think during the peace game it demonstrates that we have to keep at the crisis. This is a multifaceted crisis in many different ways that is impacting us hugely, as you said, also as directly. So we have a great interest to keep up the pressure. So we were happy with coming out of the UN last week that there was a strong support for the interim government. It was also important that the EU adopted targeted sanctions added to the list. That was in response to the strong human rights violations. That's something that we need to continue to do. Of course, sanctions can be reversed if there's progress on democracy and human rights. And I think most importantly, we've seen the efforts of Norway to conduct talks. Now they've broken down, but the international community needs to shape the conditions to resume those talks. There is no real alternative to that. And we need to make sure that the international community, whether it's the European Union, the United States, the International Contact Group, the Lima Group, all those actors are actually aligned. I think we can make progress there. There's been a proliferation because of the huge concern of the crisis, proliferation of these efforts. We need to make sure that these are all aligned. So also in that respect, I think it was very productive, the UNGA meeting last week.
So just a quick follow-up question. You said what steps should the international community take? I think your answer I'm hearing is alignment, and we need continued alignment. And you're saying that the announcement of additional sanctions from the European Union perspective is critical in that regard.
Yeah, I think we need to build the pressure. We've not just said that we would respond with additional pressure in response to further breaches of human rights violations, but we've also said that if there are no credible, we want those talks. But if these are not credible, they are not serious, then we're also looking at additional targeted sanctions.
Mr. Corres, before going to you, I'm going to switch to Spanish. So hopefully everyone has their translation at this point. Victor, dinero adicional para ayudar a los países de la región con respecto a la ola de venezolanos es imperativo, ¿no? Y la semana pasada, nuestro Task Force, Estados Unidos-Colombia, del Atlantic Council, hizo una llamada para una conferencia internacional de donantes para ayudar a Colombia. También sugerimos que los Estados Unidos deberían apoyar a Colombia con más tecnología en su frontera. Mi pregunta para ti es la siguiente. ¿Cuál es la mayor ayuda que Estados Unidos podría brindar a Colombia en este momento, luego del reciente compromiso de 120 millones en fondos adicionales para Colombia, Venezuela y la región?
Es indudable que esta crisis migratoria tiene una complejidad que no podemos desintegrar. El elemento de asistencia en salud pública sigue siendo fundamental. Los indicadores de mortalidad infantil y de mortalidad y de incremento de eventos de salud pública sigue creciendo en Colombia y van a crecer en toda la región que es impactada por el flujo migratorio. De manera que el componente de salud es irrenunciable, hay que mantenerlo, hay que incrementarlo, pero no puede ser el único. La estabilización de la población migratoria en cada uno de nuestros países es fundamental. Si el flujo migratorio no se estabiliza en los países donde está, vamos a tener fuertes brotes de resistencia y hasta de xenofobias. La importancia de que el sistema educativo asuma la población menor o adolescente en cada uno de los países es fundamental, de manera que el componente de integración a través de los sistemas educativos para la población, que creo sigue siendo casi el 40%, es fundamental. Pero aparecen componentes nuevos. Para regular la seguridad migratoria necesitamos un componente de fortalecimiento fronterizo para identificar a la población migrante, para caracterizarla y para prevenir que elementos negativos amenacen la seguridad local en muchas poblaciones de Sudamérica. Si esa seguridad de los migrantes empieza a demostrar eventos delictivos que proponen resistencia a la comunidad local, vamos a tener una ola de resistencias en todos los países y eso no va a ayudar a proteger la migración, de manera que tener tecnología, identificación y registro, caracterización de la población, nos va a ayudar a proteger a los mismos migrantes y sin duda el componente de seguridad migratoria, como lo denominamos, va a ser importantísimo en esta fase de la crisis migratoria que tenemos.
I'd like to encourage everybody who follows the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center account on Twitter. We just put out a video on the contributions of Venezuelan migrants and refugees in Peru. Y me parece tan importante, Víctor, que hacemos todo lo posible para enfrentar esta posible ola de xenofobia con respecto a los migrantes y refugiados venezolanos. Embajador Tarde, la semana pasada en Nueva York fue invocado TIAR, el Tratado Interamericano de Asistencia Recíproca. ¿Cuáles son las implicaciones reales? Y también quisiera mencionar al público que está liderando algunos de esos esfuerzos con respecto a TIAR. Entonces, muy clave esta pregunta para usted con respecto a las implicaciones reales. Y también, ¿cuáles son las opciones para TIAR, desde promover la negociación hasta acciones coercitivas de carácter militar?
Muchas gracias, Jason. Primero, quiero ofrecer mis disculpas por no haber estado esta mañana en la simulación y agradecer a los organizadores por invitarme. La pregunta, Jason, es muy difícil contestarla en breves minutos. Voy a tomarla, si se quiere, parcialmente y muy resumidamente. El TIAR nace después de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, cuando está empezando la Guerra Fría, como un tratado de asistencia recíproca entre los países del hemisferio occidental. Canadá nunca suscribió el tratado y luego los países que se fueron independizando fundamentalmente de la corona inglesa, la mayoría de ellos no suscribieron el TIAR, con las excepciones de Bahamas y Trinidad y Tobago, y algunos países se retiraron del TIAR. Venezuela fue uno de esos países, pero también lo hizo México, lo hizo Ecuador, lo hizo Bolivia y lo hizo Nicaragua. Entonces, lo que era originalmente un tratado hemisférico, hoy en día se limita a solo 19 países, porque paradójicamente Cuba nunca se fue y se sigue contabilizando, aunque no asiste ni ha expresado ninguna intención de ejercer esa membresía. ¿Para qué se hizo el TIAR? Para defender a los países del hemisferio contra una agresión. se distinguen en el tratado dos modalidades. La primera modalidad es un ataque directo armado contra un país, esa es la más sencilla, no requiere mayor interpretación. La segunda, contenida en el artículo 6 del tratado, contempla que se puede invocar el TIAR cuando la integridad del territorio, el ejercicio de la soberanía o la paz de la región se ven o pueden verse afectadas por la situación en un determinado país. Esta fue la cláusula que invocamos y para ello, desde el punto de vista de Venezuela, tratamos de armar dos frentes. En primer lugar, un frente interno, el apoyo a la gestión que se hizo para invocar el TIAR fue total, y diría que total, entre la casi totalidad de la Asamblea Nacional y la totalidad de los movimientos que son realmente opositores en Venezuela. Eso es una gama muy amplia de sectores muy variados, pero que van desde el presidente Juan Guaidó y Voluntad Popular, Primero Justicia, Acción Democrática, Un Nuevo Tiempo, el Partido 20 de María Corina Machado, Antonio Ledesma, es decir, integramos un frente realmente nacional para invocar el TIAR y hemos recibido el apoyo de todas esas organizaciones políticas. En segundo lugar, armar una coalición de países en el seno de los estados partes. Eso no fue fácil tampoco. La gente piensa a veces, bueno, hay muchos países que apoyan a Guaidó, pues basta invocar el TIAR. Cada país, como todos lo sabemos, tiene sus intereses, tiene su política, tiene sus problemas internos, tiene sus visiones internas en relación especialmente al uso de la fuerza. Y eso trajo que la elaboración de esta coalición fue lenta. Para invocar el tratado teníamos 12 votos. Hubo una enmienda introducida por Costa Rica a la resolución convocando al órgano de consulta, solicitando que se excluyera el uso de la fuerza en la convocatoria. Esa resolución fue rechazada, no porque los restantes miembros, los que votaron en contra, estuviesen de acuerdo con el uso de la fuerza, sino con un argumento fundamental, es que no se podía dictarle a los cancilleres que se iban a reunir una conducta a tener. Entonces, ahí teníamos 12 votos. Luego, la resolución que aprobamos tiene 16 votos. Es decir, solo Cuba no estaba, salvaron el voto Uruguay, y que después anunció su retiro del TIAR, y Trinidad y Tobago. Es decir, 16 países que nos pusimos de acuerdo. No sé si me estoy entendiendo demasiado y puedo en una segunda intervención seguir.
Entonces, ¿qué es el próximo paso ahora?
Bueno, tenemos 2 meses durante los cuales el órgano de consulta, que fue la reunión de cancilleres que tuvo lugar en Nueva York, delegó en los embajadores de los países partes acreditados ante la Organización de Estados Americanos en hacer seguimiento y preparar la implementación de lo acordado, que es en primer lugar la elaboración de una lista de violadores de derechos humanos, corruptos que se han enriquecido con el robo de la riqueza del pueblo venezolano, narcotráfico, terrorismo internacional, es decir, con la gama de situaciones que realmente ponen en peligro la paz del hemisférico. ¿Quiénes son los culpables? Elaborar una lista a efectos de que puedan ser detenidos, puedan ser enjuiciados, puedan ser eventualmente extraditados. Es decir, es una gama fuerte, pero no es la única. Quizás más adelante pueda referirme a otras opciones.
Perfecto. Muchas gracias, embajador. I want to switch now to some of the illegality coming out of Venezuela as we think about post-UNGA. And I think one of the messages you're getting from this discussion is the importance of avoiding any type of stasis. Minister Croas, at least if my numbers are correct here, 90% of the gold that leaves Aruba originally came from Venezuela's Arco Minero, which is a gold-rich region covering about 12% of the country. It's mined in Venezuela by state actors, criminal groups, guerrilla groups. Shipments are delivered by boat or flown to the islands. There's paperwork that's oftentimes presented that the gold was legally mined in another country, whereas it wasn't legally mined. It's then flown to other countries. Flown to Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, Switzerland, other countries to be refined and sold in banks. My question for you is, this is one aspect of the illegality coming out of Venezuela. We talk a lot about the drug trade, we talk about human trafficking, all of which we'll touch on this panel. But how does this affect Aruba, and what are the lessons that you would share for other Caribbean islands?
Before I start answering this question, maybe it's good to understand the situation of Aruba
Please.
with Venezuela. Aruba is an island in the Caribbean with a population of 100,000, and we do have more than 10% of the illegal Venezuelans are now in Aruba. The same in Curacao, the island of Curacao. On a good day, we can see Punto Fijo clearly from Aruba. It's that close to Aruba. We have had always very good relationships with Venezuela. Most of our fruits and vegetables came from Venezuela. So what happened was in the early 2018, the Venezuela government, they accused the islands, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, of illegal transportation of Venezuelan golds. The island itself didn't really see the impact of it because whatever was happening to the free zone. But when this happened, they closed the borders. Venezuela closed the borders with Aruba, Curacao, and Bonaire. And the effect that it had on the island was that from one day to the other, we had no fruits and vegetables. So we had to find a quick solution for that. So you don't realize how dependent you are when you have that kind of relationship with, we call a sister country of a party. With the closing of after some changes that we made in our regulations, they opened back the borders, which now is closed again. Aruba, in any case, in July 2019, we implemented a complete ban on import, transport, and export on Venezuela gold and metal. So that solved, in any case, that problem.
And how does that illegal? I mean, how does this continue to affect the island's policies, the threats of the illegality coming from Maduro?
The gold one, we don't see it anymore because it's an island. So you can either come by boat or by plane, but most of these, from what I understood, they came just by the legal channels, by plane, and they had the proper documents. There was even a court case in Aruba, and the company that was doing this won the case because his paperwork seemed okay. But now with the banning, we don't have this issue. What we do see happening now is per week, we see some 2 to 3 the speed boats, what we call the fast boats, coming in now with we call human trafficking, drug trafficking, and guns. So the gun is, we don't have that problem, but we see other problems coming up.
Yeah. Now, President Solis, we just concluded, as we were referring to, a peace game that looked at the many reverberations of state collapse. I'm not going to ask you to reveal the outcomes of that. That was a conversation where the outcomes will be released, Andrew, through Foreign Policy magazine in the near future. So a little a plug to stay tuned for Foreign Policy for your next print issue, as well as online for the outcomes of that, as well as the Atlantic Council and FIU. But I would like to continue to focus on trafficking that's emanating out of Venezuela. The minister we were talking about gold. We were also talking about human smuggling, arms trafficking. How might a deepening of the crisis, and again, putting on our hats on the need for a global action plan to avoid any type of inaction settling in, how might a deepening of the crisis reverberate not just to Costa Rica, given your larger profile, you're not on the rest of the region, in terms of the illegality that's coming out of this? How do you see this, a deepening of the crisis affecting the region more broadly?
Well, actually, it worsens the situation. I mean, we have to admit that the whole Caribbean basin has been plagued by illegal activities for decades, and the situation in Venezuela is only making it worse. The thing that troubles me particularly is that the drug networks are providing the regime in Venezuela and, the drug networks and international crime in general networks are providing the regime with resources it badly needs to keep its operations going. So, the rogue military groups, the different repressive bodies that exist in Venezuela are profiting from this. So many of the good things that the international community has been able to put in place, like specific sanctions on individuals that are considered to be violators of human rights or are recognized rogue elements within the international community, are being undermined by these criminal networks. So the whole effort that we have to put up to control these networks continues, and now it has to be enhanced. The thing is, the drug networks are being used by all sorts of other criminal activities. So they were already in place. So now Venezuela is just, cashing on them, and in my perspective, only making it more difficult by the fact that Colombia is again producing such large amounts of drugs that it's overwhelming the neighboring countries' capacities to neutralize that. So my response in short would be the Venezuelan chaos is adding up to the already very serious situation of international crime in the region, and it could bring about more activities in areas such as human trafficking or weapons trafficking, which is something we have feared for a long, long time. Costa Rica obviously is part of that. Unfortunately, we're not an exception in being part of that traffic, and also developing structures within the country that have been very detrimental to our internal security.
So, Ambassador DeVink, President Solis just mentioned the disastrous implications for the region already because of the criminality, but also what we could potentially expect moving forward as well. And so, as we always like to think about action and solutions, I guess I have a two-part question to you. First is what eventualities, and this could be then for the others as well. First, what eventualities is the Netherlands concerned about in regard to Venezuelan criminal organizations using the Dutch islands as an entry point into the broader kingdom, whether it's for drug trafficking or other types of nefarious activities? Not just your concern and what actions are being taken, but then also in an optimal scenario, what type of action would you like to see be led by the international community?
So I very much share the concerns as expressed by President Solis. It's something we are catching up. This is we know this is a problem that has been long there, but it's increasing, and it's really expanding very fast. There's a lot of export of instability out of Venezuela. There's no mistake about that. So what we're looking at is increasing, and this is within the Kingdom of the Netherlands, of course. So within the Kingdom, we are looking at different kinds of responses. It's not just because it's illegal arms, etc., that is affecting us, but also, we know that also there's a business model behind illegal migration. That's something that needs to be countered. So we're discussing that. Externally, we always had a presence to counter, for instance, also the increase of drugs into directly also into the Netherlands and Europe. There's been a threefold increase over the past 2 years or so. So that's tremendous. But what so we had an effort in the region, but we're trying to optimize that by expanding cooperation with governments in the region. But also we have our Navy deployed in the area, so we're making sure that the Coast Guard that we have, but also the Navy effort is increasingly better equipped to deal with this incredible challenge.
So again, it comes back to international community, collective action, as well as individual action by, in your case, the Netherlands.
Yeah, and maybe add one thing. I think we are. When discussing the Venezuela crisis, where this is not necessarily an issue that we have discussed extensively amongst international partners. I think there could be more of a collective effort, because also going forward with hopefully a transition in the near future, this is an urgent issue that needs to be addressed, because for the reconstruction of the country, there needs to be a lot of confidence also for investors to make sure that they have confidence in what's going on there. So that challenge needs to be taken on, and you need stability and security to develop also other courses of action.
Well, it seems like in many ways it's all related, right? I mean, that the international community attention has rightfully been focused on a democratic transition within Venezuela, but also how can you help to facilitate that by maybe by stopping some of the criminality that's helping to finance the Maduro regime? Embajador Tade, yo tengo una pregunta para ti en ese respecto. Para Maduro, en este momento, ¿qué tan importantes son las fuentes de financiamiento ilícito para su régimen?
Bueno, como esto ha quedado de alguna forma en evidencia en esta segunda parte, en esta segunda ronda de preguntas, lo que ocurre en Venezuela no es que algunos criminales ocupan cargos importantes en los organismos del Estado. Lo que ocurre es que los organismos criminales han tomado el Estado venezolano. Y todas esas actividades que han sido descritas aquí, no es que son toleradas o parcialmente admitidas o que se cierran los ojos, son dirigidas por Maduro y por la banda criminal que lo acompaña. Y esto es especialmente importante para contestar la pregunta. Las sanciones que se han impuesto han sido en alguna forma obviadas por la colaboración prestada por algunos países, especialmente Rusia, China, Turquía, pero también con el uso de las actividades ilegales, la explotación del arco minero, la extracción ilegal de minerales preciosos o estratégicos por parte de Venezuela es una fuente de recursos. El narcotráfico es una fuente inmensa de recursos para el régimen venezolano, y eso es lo que le permite sobrevivir en lo que a ellos les interesa. Ese dinero no va para satisfacer la necesidad del país, ese dinero va para mantener comprados a un número importante de funcionarios y para poder gastar en armas, para poder mantener un aparato represivo.
Víctor, yo tengo una pregunta en ese respecto, ¿no? Parte de la ilegalidad de Maduro tiene que ver con el hecho que da refugio en Venezuela para los disidentes de las FARC, para las ELN. Yo entiendo como hay más de 1,000 miembros de la ELN en Venezuela. Yo he tenido muchas conversaciones con otros miembros del gobierno colombiano y otras personas del hecho que cuánto tiempo puede Colombia condonar el refugio de Maduro, de esos actores en su país, ¿no? Ellos están allá en Venezuela preparando o lanzando ataques contra Colombia y si puede también describir qué es la situación para dar a todo el público una visión clara de qué es la situación en la frontera con respecto a las FARC y la ELN cruzando la frontera en una manera muy frecuentemente.
Bueno, este componente es muy importante porque la gestión de la crisis migratoria no está independizada del factor de seguridad. Todos los crímenes transnacionales ocurren con un cruce de fronteras, ocurren con un accionar diario de los grupos ilegales que están sustentando su fortaleza financiera en el narcotráfico, en el contrabando de gasolina, en el tráfico de armas, y un componente que afecta a la población venezolana y que no puede quedar condenada también a una trata de inmigrantes que en este momento puede adquirir una dimensión más grande de la que habíamos dimensionado. 300 trochas o puntos irregulares que estos grupos intentan controlar para tener posibilidad de mantener flujos que ni siquiera los bancos de la zona logran dimensionar, flujos financieros que tienen que ver con esa salida y esa permanente entrada de actividades ilegales y que además afectan la seguridad regional. Nosotros, el número de incidentes en la frontera con agresiones de grupos del otro lado de la frontera hacia la fuerza pública colombiana, hacia la población civil. Ayer mismo teníamos en el principal punto de frontera un desorden que alteró el área metropolitana binacional de Cúcuta en grandes dimensiones. Pues yo creo que Colombia tiene una gran dificultad y no puede ser Colombia la única partícipe y la única impactada por un problema de seguridad regional. Y obviamente la pregunta ¿qué tanto puede Colombia soportar esta agresión permanente? Pues esa es la pregunta y ese es el planteamiento que hace el presidente Duque y nuestro canciller para decir que la estabilidad regional está amenazada, y está amenazada porque todos los fenómenos que están ocurriendo ahí van a impactar a Ecuador, van a impactar a Perú, van a impactar a Chile. Entonces yo creo que estamos en una velocidad, lo hemos dicho, esta es la crisis más intensa migratoria que hay en el mundo por la velocidad en que va y por la complejidad de las variables que tenemos en escena en este momento, y esta participación activa del ELN y las FARC, los miembros de estos grupos que se fueron hacia Venezuela y que son criminales para nosotros, obviamente nos plantea que la crisis tiene que tener una complejidad donde el componente de seguridad tenga una integralidad que estamos requiriendo en estos momentos.
I want to move on to the more of a discussion on migrants and refugees. Minister Kroes, I'm going to go to you on that. Although I always like to break the mold a little bit and just see if there are any questions at this point on any of the themes we've discussed, any specific questions for any of the speakers, some of the points that they raised. We're going to come back to questions at the end, but I want to see if I've sparked any questions from the audience at this point. If not, that's totally fine as well. But just want to give anyone that option. Yeah, microphone will come to you in the fourth row. We'll just take one question for now, and then we'll go back to the panel. Yeah, please. If you could say your name and affiliation. Use a microphone because we're going to need translation.
Okay. Hola, buenas tardes. Me llamo Sarah Hayden. Soy una asociada de McClarty Associates. Me gustaría repasar los compromisos de la ONU de la semana pasada para averiguar si ustedes opinan que uno sea muy importante o uno va a impactar la situación. Gracias.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Okay, how important were the commitments made at the UN last week? ¿Qué tan importante, embajador?
En materia de derechos humanos, una decisión muy importante que fue la designación de una comisión de investigación para el análisis de Venezuela. Y luego, en general, en un sistema que aún no reconoce el gobierno del presidente Juan Guaidó, hubo la oportunidad en toda la semana de hacer contactos bilaterales y todo lo que se llaman side events que nos permitieron exponer a la comunidad internacional la situación de Venezuela. En consecuencia, yo creo que fue una semana muy provechosa que se inició con la invocación del TIAR y que transcurrió con un reconocimiento cada vez más creciente al gobierno del presidente Guaidó.
Minister Kroes, moving on to migrants and refugees. We've discussed, and Victor knows this all too well, Colombia, as well as Peru, host the highest absolute number of migrants and refugees. But Aruba, Curacao, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, they each host more migrants per capita. I think that's a really important point, right? I mean, Aruba, it's a small island. Yes, you don't have the same numbers that Colombia has, but you have an incredible number of migrants and refugees per capita. My understanding, about 16,000 Venezuelans in Aruba, an island with a population of 112,000? About. So this group, especially the women and children, are incredibly vulnerable. They're vulnerable to harassment, trafficking. Victor was talking before about xenophobia as well. What are the short and medium-term needs for Aruba to help with the status of Venezuelans, provide employment, healthcare, education? What is the island looking at as those near-term priorities, and within those priorities, what is top of the list?
The migration crisis has put an undue burden on, I think, all of the islands, on our health sector, on our educational sector, housing, beyond proportion. We're talking about more than 10% of our population in less than a year or two without being prepared for it. And we have to separate two things. Most of them obviously were an island. They came by plane legally and they just overstayed. And then we do have a group that do take the risk and do take a boat with all the risks at stake, because it's heavy waters between Aruba and Venezuela. Those we don't have figures on them. The ones that do come in, that came in by plane and overstayed, we don't know where they're staying either. So what's happening is that of those 16,000, only 1,400 did ask for asylum. So only 1,004 we have factual figures and we can assist them and help them. The rest of it, we do have 6,000 legal Venezuelans during the past 20 years that came to work. So what we think is what's happening is that the Arubian community, their own community, is hosting them because we're not seeing them on the streets. Mm-hmm. So now we just got assistance from Holland, technical help, from the Netherlands, which we're grateful for. Together with the UNHCR, we're trying to do some profiling, registration to know. We also see a lot of women knocking on the door of a foundation called Gente Mujer en Dificultad, which is Women in Need. We also requested the help of the Dutch with this organization, so they're getting some help, especially for pregnant women and human trafficking. And one of the biggest problems that we're facing is that we have about 1,000 students speaking only Spanish, trying to get an education in Dutch, because our educational system is Dutch. So we have now teachers taking all their time to translate during a class with 30 other children. So education is becoming a problem. We do have a pilot project starting for them, not getting them directly into the school, but start teaching them Dutch first, and then enter them into our education system. Very time and costly.
Yeah.
And then we have our borders, which is where we try to protect the most of it. So we're doing a lot on women trafficking, on the children's and health. We do give vaccines, so every child gets free vaccines, and we are giving vaccines to whomever. But most of them are scared even to say that they're in Aruba, because they're scared of being deported.
Yeah. And I'm going to Ambassador Vink, I'm going to go to you after this. But there are a number of other countries. I know Trinidad and Tobago as well has done a registration system that was in place, I believe, Minister, for 2 weeks at the time, and registered 16,523 Venezuelans in Trinidad during that 2-week period. And I'm sure there's, I think as well, Minister, that example of some of the day-to-day implications on the education system are things that just are not talked about in these kind of broader forums, and so important to focus on. Ambassador Vink, the Minister mentioned the support of the Netherlands, and I'll say, I was in Curacao a few years ago, and I recommend a trip to anybody. But on a clear day, it's possible you can see from a number of islands represented in this room today, you can see Venezuela. What the Minister mentioned a few steps. If you could elaborate on additional steps that the Netherlands is taking, not only now, but let's look a little bit more in the future. Let's look at the possibility of the eventuality of scores of new migrants and refugees that are arriving on the coast of your kingdom, especially in this scenario or the potential of inaction settling in and the crisis deepening further. What does that look like for the Netherlands? And in that scenario as well, what is the Netherlands? What's the Netherlands call to action?
Yeah, good question. Jocelyn said a lot already on that, but maybe I think when we started really looking at this crisis, we were actually anticipating that at some point there would be a sort of collapse and big crisis, and we would get big numbers. That didn't happen, right? So it's been a creeping crisis where suddenly you turn your back and you think, oh wow, we have a real issue here. And according to the OAS, and I think you were looking at those numbers as well, 15% of the population of Curacao, 10% in Aruba. So we had a big problem on our hands. I think the right now, and I'll move to the future, but right now, and Jocelyn mentioned that, Venezuela has closed the border. So that helped a little bit to stem the flow of people, especially because there's no air traffic at this particular point. But there's a structural issue because of all the pressures of the health. So what we're doing is, we're in continuous dialogue to see what we can do. There've been various requests for assistance. So just before the summer, we approved back in the Netherlands a package of around $30 million to address the most urgent needs. Now, what we're also doing, because we did that in the past and we've adjusted that, if there were to be bigger flows, we have contingency planning in place to deal with those bigger numbers. But it's also very clear that we've stepped up our discussions with the IOM and the UNHCR, because this is something that we cannot do on our own. And representatives from other countries in the region know how incredibly big, not least Victor, of course, know how huge that problem is and how quickly we've been tasked with that incredible crisis, and it has also. So we need to make sure that we are also open to receive and protect those who seek, for instance, asylum, because they need protection. Let there be no mistake about that. But it's also we have to sort of somehow take control of the vast numbers, and it's one of the reasons why some countries have introduced controls, and we are also now about to introduce visa requirements simply to get. We have limited options to get some control over the migration flows.
Ambassador, I want to make sure, when we're talking about migrants, refugees, Victor, I want to make sure to ask the question to you as well. Also, start thinking about your questions. We have about 10 more minutes, so I'm going to take a round of questions from everyone in the audience. But I think really important, Ambassador, your message of the fact that it can't just be individual countries. It needs to be collective action. And frankly, the message that we put out last week, I guess it was last week, at the UN General Assembly on our Venezuela priority event with the Colombian foreign minister and the Julio Borges, the special envoy for foreign affairs of the interim government of Guaido, and others. But the fact that this is the migrant and refugee situation is going to get worse. It is going to get much worse, and we don't even have the resources, technical assistance, financial assistance to help countries with where we are right now. And so this means all the more important that there is collective action, that the UN calls for assistance. Not only the UN makes these calls, but the countries actually contribute to those calls for assistance. Y con esto, Victor, yo quisiera darte la palabra, ¿no? Porque cada segundo, como yo entiendo, cada segundo, y tú has visto recientemente, más venezolanos están entrando en Colombia, están llegando en Colombia cada segundo. Y al mismo tiempo, como hemos dicho en la última semana con el presidente Duque y con el canciller Gómez Trujillo, que Colombia es un modelo para el mundo en su política de solidaridad total con los migrantes y refugiados venezolanos. Esto es muy importante, ¿no? El rol de Colombia como modelo para el mundo. Pero quisiera darte la oportunidad para hablar con este público. ¿Cuáles son las necesidades a medio y largo plazo para Colombia para continuar esta política, para continuar el financiamiento, el apoyo técnico para ayudar y para dar una bienvenida para los venezolanos cuando se están llegando?
Bueno, es indudable que la crisis migratoria es una consecuencia del desastre del modelo socioeconómico que está al interior de Venezuela, pero el flujo migratorio no va a concluir ni va a regresar un día a Venezuela en específico. Va a haber la necesidad de una estabilización socioeconómica. Colombia próximamente va a llegar a 2 millones de migrantes venezolanos. Tenemos municipios que aumentaron el 25% de la población en 15 meses. Necesitas no solamente ser solidario, sino tener un proceso de inclusión socioeconómico importante, y eso implica que la población venezolana, que es muy joven, tiene que encontrar un futuro económico para hacerse parte de una sociedad. Necesitamos que los venezolanos, independientemente del proceso sociopolítico que pueda ocurrir en Venezuela, sea una migración que se estabilice en todo el continente. Y si Colombia fue solidario 3 años, ahora tiene que ser solidario y productivo con los venezolanos dentro de su sociedad. Creemos que es muy importante que nuestro aparato productivo, que nuestras reformas laborales incorporen a los migrantes, y que Colombia, que nunca tuvo oportunidad de ser un país receptor de migrantes, a partir de esta crisis cambie su visión sobre la migración, incluya un modelo que incorpore a la población migrante, y necesitamos obviamente sectores privados, aparatos productivos y toda la institucionalidad posible para que el futuro de los venezolanos fuera de su país sea positivo y pueda avanzar. Y obviamente necesitamos que el problema sea regional, la discusión regional, pero la acción sea regional también. No podemos tener diálogos regionales y pensamientos nacionales para una crisis que es totalmente regional.
Perfecto, gracias, Víctor.
No, I think the problem is
your name and affiliation.
Yeah, Rodrigo Diamante, Un Mundo Sin Mordaza. I think the problem is we're moving forward more to a medium-term solution, not just a short-term. So we're waiting for 5 million to be outside Venezuela in December, 8 million next year. So we're talking a huge numbers going out from Venezuela. Are we prepared for this? I think, because I think that is going to happen. That is the most probable thing to happen. And the second question is, are we looking for a solution just inside Venezuela, or are we understanding that all other players like Russia and China and Cuba maybe are really invested in Maduro's decision? So, you know, are we playing a big game that is, I think, what is really happening here, or we're just trying to resolve a problem internally that at the end maybe it's not the solution?
Thank you, Rodrigo. President Solis, can I turn to you for the first reaction, and then maybe Ambassador De Vink on the registration? Yeah.
Well, you know, I adhere to everything that has been said about the immigration situation. You know, there's a second model. That's the Costa Rican model vis-a-vis Nicaragua. And we've been, you know, receiving migrants for 50 years without support. I don't want to sound extremely nationalistic. We're not talking about that, and we're not teaching Dutch to the Nicaraguans, so that's not a problem for us. But the weight of having these immigrants is tremendous, and we're never prepared. You're never prepared enough, because you cannot fathom what this implies. I mean, in terms of economic development, how much of these populations contribute to the national economy? A lot. Are they an asset? Yes. We want them? Yes. Could we live without them? Probably not. But the costs, the investments you have to do are impossible to imagine in the longer term. So you have to go almost by the hour, and particularly in regimes such as the Nicaraguan regime or the Venezuelan regime, where they can turn up the pressure to get people out because it's a good business for them. They get rid of pressure. So, you know, I fear that the weight is upon the governments. And yes, we need the international support, but I don't think it's going to get there easily.
Ambassador De Vink, could you address the other?
Yeah, maybe the 2 points. One, Minister Young, very briefly. I think your warning is very timely, and you're spot on. We've some experience with that. We've seen, you know, we've seen some elements among those who were registered, you know, that are actually quite concerning. Maybe on the crisis that is only getting bigger. I think, first of all, my point would be I can only stress how urgent it is. I know it's a lot of heavy lifting for all of us, but how urgent it is that we do get a solution for the real problem that is in Venezuela. Mm-hmm. But secondly, you can never be prepared enough. I agree with that. But what we should do, and I think that in a way we tried to do that also last week at the UN, is raise the awareness. Also make sure that there's a call on the solidarity of the international community, because it's not there right now, right? This will be bigger than the Syrian crisis on migration and refugees. We need to make sure that what the UN has put out in terms of requirements financially and others is there, because I also see and know that countries in the region don't feel supported right now, and I think that needs to be done, because we're only getting started.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, please.
We as Caribbean islands, we also, most of the time, we're forgotten. They forget about us.
We haven't forgotten about you here.
And most of us host more than 2 million tourists from all over the world per year. We need one measles outbreak, hitting Europe, the United States. Do we need for that to happen, for it to become a global issue? And that's what we feel. We feel that we're all swimming in deep waters, trying to survive with the immigrants that we have, but that globally the internal solution is not being taken care of.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that excellent final point. I think it reinforces the reason that not only we had this simulation this morning that you'll be reading about later, but also why we brought together this panel a week after the UN meetings, right? That this is we can't let a day pass without continuing to focus on the need for a democratic transition in Venezuela. Not only is it imperative for the Venezuelans themselves, but we just spent the last hour talking about the real implications for the region and with the Dutch representation and others, the global implications. And if Venezuela were Syria, you probably see a lot more attention, and we need to make sure that attention is focused, because the one thing that benefits the Maduro regime is stasis and inaction. And we cannot let that settle in. I want to again thank our partners, Andrew Foreign Policy Magazine, Frank, Brian, Randy, Florida National. You can have time to ask the panel's questions afterwards. I always like to. We don't always start on time, but I always like to end on time. And I want to thank the panelists, President Solis, Ambassador De Vink, Minister Gross, Victor, and Ambassador Tade for your presentations, and thank my incredible team that put together these entire events. Domingo Sarduni in the black suit over there has been tirelessly working to put all this together over the course of the last few months. Working with Diego Adea, Paula Tufro, Angela Chavez, and the rest of the team. So thank you all very much, and enjoy your afternoon. And if there's other questions, please feel free to ask the panelists.